Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the New Adjuster Podcast. This is Season 4, Episode 4. We have a very special guest for you today, but let's tell you about what today's episode is. Today's episode title is Why Do Some Adjusters Get More Work Than Others? We all know that as adjusters, especially the new folks that are listening to this, you're trying to get your first opportunity. And once you do get your first one, you're trying to get more opportunities. We hope to give you some insight on that today, so that way you can figure out how to get repeat deployments, more opportunities maybe than others, and really get set up on the right foot. Again, we've got a very special guest, but before we get into that, if you've missed any of our previous episodes and or seasons, go back, give them a watch or a listen wherever you get your podcasts. As always, we're your hosts. My name is Murphy.
I'm Kelsey.
And we are again back for you today. We're super excited that you're joining us today. We are going to go ahead and introduce our guest, but before we do that, make sure you hit the subscribe button, C&C Catastrophe and National Claims, hit the bell icon so you get notified of all future content that is coming your way. Leave a comment below. Who knows, you may get featured on a future episode. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. Let's go ahead and introduce our guest. He is the Director of Quality Assurance here at C&C. We are super happy that he's on our team, and we want to introduce you to him today. Dan Hornaday. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks. So jump right into it. Ask this first question. For those unfamiliar with quality assurance, can you explain your role and how it impacts adjusters in the field and at the desk?
Okay. As the Director of Quality Assurance, I oversee a team of QA specialists who act as the gatekeeper of the product that we produce out in the field and it gets delivered to the desk adjuster.
Gotcha. So when you say that gatekeeper is quality assurance, and again, for our new folks, kind of the in-between what the field adjuster does, when they go out and inspect the claim, write the estimate, take the photos, and then by the time it gets to the carrier, whether it's a TPA like C&C is, or, a carrier that we're doing field only work for and they're issuing payments, that QA is kind of that middle ground, right? Where that's like you said, the gates of whether something goes through or whether it needs revisions, things like that, right?
Correct. Basically, what we do is, we get a copy of the estimating guidelines and the procedures that the carriers want to see what their expectations from us are. So what we do is we implement that into trainings that we push out to the field folks. And when we get that product in, we score that. Mm-hmm. And, we make sure that, they're delivering the ask. And additionally, what that allows us to do is it allows us to identify some deficiencies in some of these adjusters. So when we have meetings with them, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting, we can deliver meaningful feedback.
Yeah. So obviously in your time, even now as a director of QA, I know you review files currently for us. You're not just the, ivory tower watching over everybody. You're in there getting your hands dirty as well. So in your time of doing this role and then up until this, being a claims examiner or a file reviewer, what are some things you notice first when you review an adjuster's work? Maybe not specifics, but what are some things you notice on if they're on the right track, if they're going to end up being a good adjuster? What are some things that really pop out at you?
Well, small stuff aside, like the right letterhead and logos and things like that. Yeah. The first thing that jumps out of me is the content. Mm-hmm. Am I looking at tiny one sentence deliveries or am I getting small paragraphs? Right. And, the more detail, the better.
Right.
Same thing applies to photographs. Am I getting 5 photos or am I getting, 45 photos? Mm-hmm. And, one of the other things that I would say separates an average adjuster from a good adjuster would be the amount of effort that they put into those things, like the labeling of photos and stuff like that. Like a lot of times it's super easy to use that cut and paste feature.
Yep.
And I would highly encourage everyone to take the time to thoughtfully label each photo individually.
Yeah, just myself looking at a file and if I see overview of damage, I'm like, please tell me what you're actually seeing. Is there water damage to the baseboards? Is that what you're taking a picture of? Is it water damage to the drywall. What am I looking at here? So
Right.
that's definitely something I
It,
expect.
exactly, Kelsey. When you see that overview of damage, you're thinking, when I scroll to the next picture, there better be a description
I
here.
hope there's not another overview of damage, but it's a water spot, Yeah.
Exactly. We want to see the overview of the room, like where it is, and then we want to see what it is. So tell me what it is. Water damage to baseboard. Water stain on the carpet, water stain on the ceiling. Things to that effect.
Right.
I mean, you can see there's damage. There's a stain. Is it water damage, or is this something long term that's been there? Is it a dog had an accident there? What am I actually looking at? Because there is differences in damage and also covered damage. Not saying that we want the adjusters to call coverage within their photo reports, but just saying, is this we can document, is this damage related to this loss specifically? It's something that I see.
Exactly. And, because this is the new adjuster podcast, a lot of first time adjusters that are out there aren't going to understand what they're actually looking at. So I highly encourage everybody that is new to reach out to your, to your field manager. It's super easy after the fact to go ahead and send a copy of your photo sheet in and just kind of walk through it one by one, so you get a better understanding. Because what you want to do is you want to get out of your own way. You don't want to be the biggest obstacle to yourself. You want to constantly be learning. So if you ever come across something that you're just not sure of, reach out to, a supervisor, or if you've got peers that got you into this business, work on, reach out to your network and get that help there.
Yeah. I agree. It helps to have a team, and we talk about that all the time, having people around that have your back. And a lot of adjusters are going to get into this field during a cat situation. And we always say to take advantage of those war rooms and those other people that are being deployed with you, make a friend.
Yeah.
So what is something that carriers may expect from adjusters today that maybe they didn't 5 or 10 years ago? That's a hard question, I know, because I feel like it evolves every day. Evolves every day.
Well, to be honest, I think they would actually expect a little less than they would 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right now they're utilizing more technology than actual physical adjusting. So, a lot of these carriers now utilize hover to go in there and, basically do a 360 scan of the room, versus back when I was out in the field and I'm physically laying tape or shooting a laser and physically calculating measurements. A lot of this stuff now is, based off of the LiDAR on your iPhone and just kind of, basically walking and panning the room.
Sure. Well, and I know, you mentioned it earlier, and with the evolution of technology and how that's getting used more and more out in the field, and even from the QA side, we have AI tools that help us, review files and things like that. I think it helps the adjuster to not have to focus on everything, but they can focus on the smaller details, like you mentioned earlier, like your headers, your opening statements, your formatting, your grammar, things like that, because those bigger technology items are helping you with the sketch or, whatever, taking photos and measurements, things like that. So I think that those evolutions in technology help with you being able to focus on the more small, minute details that, a lot of file reviewers, that's the first thing they see. They see those grammatical errors, or those, like you said, one sentence GLRs, general loss reports, instead of the paragraph that tells the full detail of what's going on, because AI is not going to be able to do that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It gives you the time also to focus on the carrier specific, best claims practices. They want things done a certain way. And if you don't get it done, that's going to be the first thing it gets kicked back for. And if you have time to focus on that, is huge.
Yeah. What would you say? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Dan.
No, I was going to say, as a new adjuster, one of the hardest things to do is to set your ego aside, because you are going to get feedback, and you cannot take that stuff personally, because the people that are giving you feedback, they want you to be successful.
Yeah.
And in order for you to be successful, you're going to get tips, you're going to get tricks, and don't just, again, you can't have your ego involved and feel like because someone's giving you that perspective, it's something you shouldn't consider.
Right. We say that all the time too. I mean, we're on the same team. Those field adjusters in the QA department, we're all working for the same people. We all want to do a good job, because the better job we do, the more claims that adjuster gets, the more claims that QA person gets to review, and the wheel keeps turning. So I agree with you. You can't take it personal. Everybody's going to get revisions at some point, especially the new folks, and that's fine. That's how you learn. When you get those revisions, you kind of start building your repertoire of, okay, next time I'll remember this, and it only makes you better as an adjuster in the long run.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So true.
So again, in looking at files, and when your QA folks look at files, what would you say are some things that kind of make it go from a high quality file, like a very well written file, to just a so-so, just average, could have done better? What are some things that you think your folks look for?
Like we touched on earlier, the quality of the photo labels, the content in the report. When I see just simple answers to some of the questions that just say NA,
right,
tell me a little bit more.
Right, give you a little detail, yeah.
Instead of not applicable, like for subrogation, let's say, often we see NA, and you can kind of speak on that. Just say, this loss was caused by lightning. There's no subrogation potential. Something along those lines. Just add a little bit more content, because at the end of the day, we want the carrier to feel like they're getting the best bang for their buck.
Right. Well, and we say it all the time. We can review it to the best of our ability and think that we've got it in tip-top shape. The carrier is going to be looking at the same things, but also maybe a few more things than what we're looking for. Everybody has their own perspective. I know Craig has always said it. We did a quality control episode a couple seasons ago. If you missed it, go back and listen to it. But he always says, you can have 3 different file reviewers look at the same file. They may all have 3 different sets of findings. It's not robotic. It's all about your perspective and what you see when you look at that claim.
Exactly. And then the carrier's perspective.
Exactly. And that's ultimately the one that means the most. You have to meet that expectation, or else, the rest of it's kind of moot. So.
Well, not only that, but
Absolutely.
I know, like with some new adjusters, they'll get offended. I don't want to say the word offended. That's not what I mean. But you send a file back and you're saying, hey, correct these couple of things. They send it back. Maybe we missed something on the first round, and they're like, oh man, we found this too. We need this revised. And they're like, God, you could have said that initially. But again, like you said, we are humans. We are QAing these files. We are auditing them to make sure everything is right. We're not always going to catch it on the first go round. And maybe you submitted something and you're like, oh, I found some more photos of this damage here, so I'm going to add those in and those descriptions and figure out, add more quality to the file. And maybe we found a typo in that. So it's kind of a back and forth game, but the quicker that you get those revisions turned in, the better, because we have time to review them before getting them sent to the carrier, because there are timelines after timelines after timelines that we have to meet and make sure that, we're all on the same page before it gets to the carrier. So we always say, turn it in within a day, turn it in on site if you can. And that way we have the time to look at it, send it back to you if it needs any changes, get it back to us, get it approved, and get it in the file for the carrier, because they're going to have to QC it too. And, a lot of states have statutes where, you have 7 days to provide said estimate to the insured. So we're on a strict timeline from the beginning to the end of the claim life cycle. So I feel like that's a big thing.
Yeah.
So what would you say well, I guess we kind of covered common mistakes, but what are some of the bigger mistakes that you see in a file from newer adjusters?
For newer adjusters, it's usually just the small stuff, missing the opening statement, having the wrong headers. And the biggest one is it's not print previewing your estimate before you look at it.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
When you're just looking at it, the numbers go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and if you see something, it's like 1, 14, 13, 26, it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, I'd always encourage anybody to print preview their estimate. And then before you, paste your GLR, your general loss report, into whether it's the GLR form or you complete your token report, I would highly encourage everybody to run the spell check tool.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make sure that the grammar is there.
Yep.
Also, another thing that I learned a little later down the road was, when you're about to submit it, take a break for a second, get up, go walk away, and come back and then reread it. Because when you're in the moment of writing it, it all makes sense.
Everything feels right.
And you can go back and reread it, and like grammatical errors will sound, in your head at least, they will sound normal. But if you get up and, go get yourself a cup of coffee or make a sandwich and then come back and then reread it, that's going to pop out.
Yeah.
So I would encourage everyone, especially on your bigger files, to go ahead and just pause before you submit it.
Yeah.
I do the same thing with like letters that I'm writing on the desk side or that I'm reviewing. I always want somebody to look at it before I send it out because, we have those backups. We like QA for a reason. We have supervisors that review letters, but I'm writing them myself. So I'll send to another manager in the office and I'm like, hey, take a look at this for me because I'm missing something. And they're like, yeah, you misspelled restaurant or whatever the case is, because I will misspell that every time.
Hardest word to spell ever. I will die on that.
Every time I will misspell it, or convenience.
Yeah.
One of the two. But there's always a reason to have it looked at because you may think that it's perfect. And a lot of times spell check doesn't correct everything. I spelled traveling wrong earlier and it didn't correct me. So that bothered me that it didn't correct me because I knew that it would. Right.
Yeah.
Get with it.
Yeah. And we talk about new adjusters like out in the field, Dan, but as well as we do, in a CAT, it's all hands on deck. Everybody seemingly gets deployed. Sometimes there's new people that get pushed into a QA role just for the sheer numbers. We need people because of the amount of volume we have. What are some things that as a new QA person you think makes them good? Like what are some characteristics or some qualities in QA people, whether they be new coming in or folks you have on staff now that you think, that's what makes them good at what they do?
I think attention to detail is probably the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
And I need someone that's personable.
Right.
Because you're going to be interacting with these folks. You're going to be interacting with these folks quite a bit. So the demeanor and how you come across, that delivery when you're asking for changes,
sure.
That makes a huge difference because, as you mentioned, in a situation like CAT where we've scaled up and it's all hands on deck,
mm-hmm.
It's a high stress situation already. Sure. This person's got a ton of volume sitting on their desk. So, it's like sending a text and using the wrong emoji.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to make the message come across completely different based off of your attitude. So, good eye for detail, a good fundamental understanding of policy, and a great attitude. I think that's going to make a good QA.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get mad at somebody or say, oh my God, their last 5 files had the same thing. But we have to think about it too on the inside. They're working as fast as they can to get these files into us. And it is our job to find any mistakes that may be there, or, we're not just a paper mill running it through and approving things. We are actually digging into it, and it's easy to get aggravated, but keeping that in check is something that we all work on daily.
Yeah.
So
that please remove line 7 goes a lot better than take out line 7.
Yeah.
Just even the little things, like you said, to be impersonal, the please remove, can we get some explanation as to why we added this in the master bathroom? Something like that comes off way better to an adjuster. Again, we're on the same team, and every file's its own.
In addition to, just firing off emails, I encourage everybody from time to time to pick up the phone and have voice-to-voice contact with these people, because a lot of times, these guys are just sitting out there and they feel anonymous and invisible to everybody. But, having that voice-to-voice contact lets them know that they're understood, they're appreciated, and they're heard.
Yeah.
So during a CAT, show up to the war room, show up and, make your, I don't want to say make your presence known. Don't be whatever. Be there and ask the questions. Same thing in our, daily, weekly, whatever Teams Zoom meetings that we
Yeah.
have. Be present and, talk through your questions that you have. We go through a lot of different claim scenarios. And if you're like, hey, I'm reading this a little bit differently than that in the BCPs, can you elaborate on how you want, this kind of thing worked out?
Right.
I feel like that's a really big thing that a lot of people don't or they take for granted. We are a industry that is not always a face-to-face industry with the TPA or the carrier. You're face-to-face with the insured, but you're not face-to-face with the people that you talk to every day you work with. We went to a meeting with field adjusters not too long ago, you and I, Dan, and one of the field adjusters behind me, he said, I'd know her voice anywhere. Because we talk all the time. We communicate clearly and effectively when you can get on the phone because like you said, the wrong emoji, but people will read a text message or a email completely the wrong way.
Yep.
And I didn't intend for it to be mean or I didn't intend for it to sound harsh when I typed it out. I sometimes will throw a smiley face in there if I've got to, just to make it sound like I'm not being mean here. What are some habits that seem minor to adjusters but can significantly impact quality in a file?
The biggest thing I would say is timeliness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because that's one of the biggest things that we face on the QA side is how fast you can get the product back into us. Because we are on a short clock as far as what our deadline to turn the product into the carrier is. So counting on the fact that, something is going to have to get revised. If you can get that file into us quicker, we can get it back to you with some recommendations, allowing you to get it back to us. So we're in that safe window. As often as possible, we want to avoid getting the product back to them, after their deadline.
Oh, yeah.
All right, all good stuff. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. We got an ad read to do, and then we'll come back for part 2 of today's interview with Dan. All right, before we jump into part 2 of today's episode, let's go ahead and introduce our sponsor of the week. This segment is brought to you by Blue Leopard Agency. Marketing shouldn't feel like a guessing game. If you're overwhelmed and looking for a way out of the chaos, Blue Leopard Agency has your back. Escape the marketing jungle, reach your ideal customers, and fuel your business growth with a custom strategy. Get started today at blueleopardagency.com. All right, part 2 of today's episode with Dan Hornaday. Again, Dan, thanks for joining us. Let's go ahead and jump right back into it. How important is it for consistency when it comes to building trust with carriers and firms like ourselves? That, that consistency of the work product that we give them, and even consistency of communication.
That's consistency is synonymous with reliability, and that's huge.
Yeah,
Put that on a quote card, Jeremiah. That's great.
Yeah,
because what that's going to do is, set the opinion of that field adjuster in the minds of the QA guy, the dispatch person. Like if the admins know that you have a reputation of always being on time, always making your contacts, always updating your files, you're the person that they're going to want to use. Sure. They're going to want to give claims to you. Likewise, on the QA side, if you're the person that takes good feedback, or if you're just constantly giving good reports, yours are the files that they're tending to want to grab first.
Sure.
So I think that consistency is absolutely huge.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, even the consistency from us to the carrier, we provide them a good, consistent work product that they know what to expect, and they know when, for instance, a CNC file comes back, they know, hey, these guys do a good job. They've got good people on it. They take their time. They review it. They make sure things are in order. Even those types of things.
I'm going to send all my claims to CNC.
Right. And that's
absolutely. And in the event that, there's a one-off that comes out and, isn't our best work or something like that, because we've had that consistent track record with us, they're a lot more lenient and forgiving with us.
Sure.
And willing to work with us over small mistakes. Less apt to crucify us at the stake to over something that's pretty minor.
Well, and in a cat, if you produce that type of consistency throughout the year and in your daily work and, your hailstorms and things like that or what have you, when it comes cat season and there's a hurricane, they're more likely to say, hey, they've done good work all year. They provide a good product. It's consistent. Their communication's always there. They seem to have good adjusters on their end. Let's, give them an extra percentage of these claims that we're going to get from this, named storm. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I was just going to piggyback off of that. If you deliver consistently in cat, it's one of those things where they just constantly renew your cat.
Oh yeah.
Cat contract.
Yeah.
And that, that's where you want to be. You always want to be in that A tier with the company.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Being consistent with your claims, but also I know you mentioned communication, but that is so huge. And trust me, we get it. These adjusters, you're on a roof, you're under a crawl space, you're inspecting someone. But if one of the admins, if QA calls you just to kind of run through one of your claims, call them back. Don't wait till the next day, or don't beat around the bush and kind of ignore it, because it's not going to go away. If somebody reaches out to you, communication is key when it comes to QA and who you're working with. If they can reach you on the phone and talk you through something, it'll help you become a better adjuster. It will help your files look better moving forward, because I know a lot of times you get an email and it's like, okay, I'm going to do what they said, but you don't really understand why you're doing what they said. But if you get on the phone with them, they could say, hey, look, this is why in the BCPs it says to depreciate this or not to depreciate something, and this is why I'm asking you to make that change. So communication is huge, and being consistent with that communication. I'll just tell you an experience that we've had. We've had adjusters that we worked for 15 years, and then we could call them every day. Hey, yeah, I'll take that claim for you. I'll take that claim for you. And then they start, drifting off, and they're, you call them and you don't hear back from 'em until a week later. And it's like, I'm sorry, we cannot use you if you can't communicate with us and let us know the status of your claims that you have open, because that is something that is so entirely important when it comes to claims is the consistency and the communication. Those two things are over the top important.
Yeah. And that even goes for the new adjusters too. I know everybody wants to work. Everybody wants to get claims. Choose a firm that has good communication with you. It's only going to help you in the long run. If you have a firm that you're working for, or, somebody like that, or maybe even a carrier specifically, that they don't really have that personal touch, or, it is, very intermittent communication between you and them, that may not be the best place for you. So we always, to new adjusters too, keep that in mind, not just from our point of view, do we have to be consistent, but for a new adjuster, make sure that they're consistent with you, because it's only going to make you better. It's only going to make you want to work more for them, and it eventually, let's be honest, make you more money because you get more claims. So.
Also, I want to speak to, sorry, I know I'm just talking, but consistency. It's one thing to make sure that we're getting everything right and by the book, but also with claims, you have to consider the changes that come out, statutes that come out in different states, different BCPs that come out from the carrier, different guidelines that may be presented to us. We have to stay consistent in monitoring those things and ensuring that our files are kept up to date, especially with the statutes, the state statutes that come out, and the requirements that those entail, because it can change your claims handling in a split second. And all of those times you will get communication from your firm or from the carrier or whatever, but it's extremely important to be able to pivot super quickly on a dime.
Yep. Very true.
Look, Dan's getting to experience my rambling.
Well, you hit the nail. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
There's just going to be times you're going to get comfortable in doing what you're doing, and like Kelsey said, we are destined to have to pivot.
Yeah.
A new statute's going to come out, and we're just going to have to rework our workflow. And you're going to have to, to be a good adjuster, you're just going to have to be able to be adaptable.
Yeah, that's a good word for it, because things are going to change.
Yep, they are.
There's another saying that should be on a quote card. I don't remember it. Anyway.
Maybe next episode.
I have a whole quote episode.
Yeah.
What can adjusters do to become the kind of person that gets requested specifically for future deployments?
Oh, this one's easy. Develop a reputation of being easy to work with.
Yeah.
Someone that takes feedback, someone that's responsive. I'd say being accessible, being friendly, being courteous to your admins, and having that what we just talked about, having that consistency. If you've got that reputation of being easy to work with, I think it shows not only on the admin level, but even at the upper management level. When we're looking at these scorecards for folks, certain names jump out at us. Mm-hmm. And, I'll be the first one to say there's some of my field guys that are in my personal cell phone, that I call and I talk to.
Yeah. That'll do it, because there are names that I can say to the president and the CEO, and they know exactly who I'm talking about because they've done a bang up job.
Right.
So it's important to make a name for yourself in a positive way, not a negative light by, oh, you were on this same audit for 6 weeks in a row because we couldn't follow up, couldn't get you to turn in your revisions, or couldn't, the claim files were always late. Present something that's, acceptable. Take those phone calls, take those emails from the admins that they send you, and they're like, hey, this one was inspected 2 days ago. We really need to get that one turned in. Don't take it offensively. We're not emailing you because this is fun for us. We want your files turned in and things, taken care of, and they're taking time out of their day. They're busy as heck too. And following up with you on you could say, oh crap, I thought I hit connect and complete and Xactimate on that claim, and I guess it didn't submit. So there's always things that it's not always that you've done something wrong, but again, we are humans, and that's just what happens. That's the nature of this business. It's the nature of humankind to make mistakes. And as long as you take them with grace and fix them with grace, and not, bitterness, or not, getting offended by a request for change,
Right.
then we're good.
Yeah, because it's going to happen. We say it all the time. You're going to get revisions. Don't take it personal.
Yeah.
But for adjusters that want to continue improving, not just their estimating or their inspection kind of walkthrough, what are some other things that they can work on in the off season and prep for a CAT? What are some things that they can work on to keep improving that's maybe not specific to the estimating software or how they inspect their claims? What are some other things they can improve on and always get better at?
There's so much with the internet now. There's so many resources that are available. Not talking about the estimating software and things like that. You can go into Home Depot or Lowe's on a weekend, mm-hmm. and, they offer these little classes that talk to you about how to remodel a bathroom or something like that. And I encourage people to go sit in on some of those, because as someone that's out in the field, when you're writing your estimate, aside from just looking at the things like baseboards, drywall, some tile, things like that, it's going to show you all of the steps that's involved in putting that together. So you'll be able to put together a more comprehensive estimate. So, I would say learn as much as you can and try to learn things that are outside of your comfort zone. So if you're a property guy, develop your network. Try to team up with someone that's a commercial guy and develop an apprenticeship there, and maybe do a few ride-alongs and kind of see what they do, because the commercial side of things is completely different than, residential homeowner stuff. First time you
in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You walk into a building and you see metal studs. You're like, what is this? It's completely different.
Yeah. You got any drywall around here?
Exactly. It's paramount that in this business, you don't settle on the fact that you know everything. You always have to be willing to keep learning, because there's always something to learn. Yeah. And, outside of property, there's other areas of adjusting to look into. So,
I mean, there's flood and auto, and well, I've worked in flood some, but not auto, and just different groups like Facebook groups they have about adjusting. You can go in there and just read through some posts. Granted, a lot of them are folks looking for work right now because it's been so slow, the past couple years, but you can still skim through and find different, posts about, how do I handle this? Or maybe you can read up on online on different videos that you find and just see different ways. You can, like you said, go into Home Depot, but you can watch videos that show you step one to the completion of a project. Have you ever had any remodeling done on your home or your family's home? Go watch those contractors. Say, hey, can I just see what you've got going on and kind of figure it out? Because that's what I did when my bathroom got remodeled. It was through a insurance claim, and it wasn't remodeled. I shouldn't say it like that. But I had an insurance claim, and then they redid my bathroom. But I was able to kind of go through the steps myself. I work with it every day. I see it every day. But following along with it and seeing the process from point A to point Z is pretty cool to see. And my dad's a sheetrock finisher by trade, and he would always take us as kids to see what they did. And I love to play with the mud and just get extremely messy. And I remember cutting my leg open on a sheetrock knife when I was little in his back seat, and just kind of been around it all my life. But in the same token, you want to make sure that you are paying attention to what is going on in the day to day. So something that I've learned recently is that one person, one contractor is going to do this a certain way, and this other contractor that's going to come in and give a second opinion is going to have a completely different way to write an estimate. And I'm talking about a supplement. Maybe they come in and maybe it's a bulk supplement. They don't give you a line item broken down supplement, but then they might have 3 different ways to rebuild this bathroom than this other contractor did. But take the time to learn those different ways to come to the same end product. Maybe it's more cost efficient to do it this way. Maybe the materials are more expensive and they have to use these instead. But there's no one way to get to the end of an insurance claim. So, just kind of learning all sides of it is pretty cool. Sorry, rambling again.
No, you're good.
That went all different ways.
Kelsey, I would add to that. If since we're talking about skills they need to develop, the main thing that I would focus on for a new adjuster is working on the ability to ask for help.
Yeah,
because there's just going to be times that you look at something and you don't know what it is, and then analysis paralysis sets in. And, you should have had this estimate back in 24 hours. Now it's 48 hours. And now you're sitting on it for a week. And what we talked about earlier about developing that reputation of being easy to work with, now all of a sudden you're developing that relationship of being hard to work with or constantly late and things like that. So by all means, don't suffer in silence. A lot of these firms, particularly ours, there's people on standby that will take your call and, talk you through that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing is too, as new adjusters, they almost see it as a negative if they ask questions like, oh, they're going to think I don't know anything. It couldn't be further from that. I mean, and I'm speaking for the QA department here, even though that's not what I do every day. I think as a QA person, if somebody's asking you questions, that means that they're eager to learn. They're willing to take on, information and knowledge that you're going to give them. It's only going to make them better, and it makes you think, hey, this person, they're invested. If they're going to call me and ask questions about this and that, then I know they're not just turning in junk. They want to make sure they turn in a good product, which kind of circles all the way back to the beginning. That's what we're in the business of, is turning in a good work product, to the carrier and eventually to the policyholder.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Building a reputation with your firm and your QA is extremely important, because not only are they the ones approving your files, but they are the ones telling, the dispatch and admins like, hey, they completed all these files. They did an excellent job. They took direction well. They pivoted very well when changes came about. Please give them the next 20 claims that come in. So Not only is it, you're doing a good job for the carrier, which is our number one, the insured and the carrier, and making sure that everything is correct by them. But it's also going to help you in the long run by being able to get more claims and you know, working more and hopefully sticking around for when we have a cat that's going to hit us a cat 5 somewhere. What you say?
Yeah. Well, and Dan, talk about this too. We're talking about improving skills. One that I think can be overlooked, especially from a field adjuster, is the customer service side of it. Being with that policyholder. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, some must do's. When you're calling them, going out for the inspection, those types of things.
The main thing there's lots of things. So you want to take the initiative. As soon as you get that claim, you want to go ahead and call.
Right.
One of the main things that we hear in the office is that it took the field adjuster, 3 days to call me.
Right.
We hate hearing that.
Yeah,
Absolutely hate hearing that. If you get that claim, reach out to them, because it might just be one claim on a list of 10 to you, but to the person that's suffering that loss, it's the most important thing that's ever happened in their life. So, they want to feel like someone's throwing them that lifeline as soon as possible.
Right.
The next thing that I would say on the customer service aspect is to have empathy. Mm-hmm. When you're out there, sometimes it's just more important to let them talk and to just listen.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're cognizant of their concerns, even in the back of your mind. If you know that it's something that's not covered, be tactful about it. Just say, okay, I understand. I'm going to go ahead and include it in my notes and I'll submit it to the carrier. It might not make it onto your estimate because it's something that's not covered,
sure,
but let them know that they're heard, you're addressing their concerns, and you're going to go ahead and pass it on.
Yep. Hey, even showing up on time for an inspection. Hey, I'll be there at noon on Thursday. Be there at noon on Thursday. Don't be late. Call them when you're on the way. Little things like that.
Yeah, we have to be respectful of their time.
Yeah.
We've dealt with people just, adjusters not showing up for the inspection, but things happen and we know life happens and urgent situations, stuff happens. But again, the communication and saying, hey, call your insured and say, hey, I just had this come up. I'm not going to be able to make the inspection today. Can we please schedule it for tomorrow?
Right.
Or call your firm up and say, hey, I got in a car. I don't even want to say that. That's terrible. But
yeah, I'm having car trouble. Something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let them know and say, is there any way that you can reassign this claim? Is there another adjuster that can get out there today by chance?
Right.
Because I want to keep this inspection with the insured, but I'm not going to be able to make it today.
Yeah.
That right there says a lot to us to know that you give a crap that you're calling and you're saying, hey, I need some help today on this inspection. I'm not going to be able to make it.
Yeah, we'd rather you do that than not go,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, Kelsey. That shows us the integrity of that field adjuster, that they recognize that in their timetable, they can't best suit that insured. So they're willing to forego the money on that to get, quicker service for that insured.
All right. Yep. So I think I got one more question for you.
Okay.
If you could give one piece of advice to every adjuster listening today, something that could help them have a longer, more successful career in claims, what would it be? That's a hard one because I'm putting you way on the spot.
Okay, so get out of your own way. Be willing to learn. Be willing to be personable. Develop relationships with your team. And be accountable.
I like all those.
I love it.
I like all those. And again, for our new adjusters that are listening to this, or our people that maybe have only worked, one storm or a couple claims, they're looking to do more. Those are all things that can help them do more and get more work, and eventually, maybe create some type of lasting relationship with a carrier or a firm that, goes on for years. That's what we want for everybody. Hell, that's why we started this podcast, was to get more people involved and interested and help people progress throughout their career. And then that's really kind of the purpose of what we're doing here. So I think those are all good things, Dan.
Yeah. And something, that a lot of people don't think about, but the claims world is so small that you may work with somebody on this deployment and you see them 10 years later on, at another carrier that you're working with, and they could be your boss, or they could be, an admin. You never know where you're going to go in this field. So make those relationships and talk to people, because it will truly help you go far in figuring out, where you're meant to be. Because there's so many options, like we talked about earlier. There's claims, there's QA, there's admins, there's flood. There's so many different. There's management positions. There are
Sure.
the options are endless. There's accounting and claims, which you wouldn't think how difficult claims accounting could be. But when you have 1099 adjusters and you're having to bill taxes for 50 different states, there are so many options in the claims world that you could get your feet into. Accounting, payroll, HR, anything is possible. So I think, again, just, making those friendships, making those decisions that you want to be in this, and having the communication that's open is huge. And I know that has nothing to do with QA, but I just kind of, that thought came to my head. Dan, we really appreciate you being on with us today, and we really enjoyed
Well,
it.
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.